what we've done. It describes what management's responsibility is for the financial statement. It is management's responsibility for these financial statements. It's our responsibility to audit the financial statements, which is described there in our auditor's responsibility section. It talks about, in that we do tests of transactions. We don't perform detailed tests of every transaction or every balance in the financial statements. If we did, it would take a significant amount of time. So we do risk assessment where we think that where the most risk is with the organization, and we plan and perform our tests relating to those risk areas. Top of page 2 is the opinion paragraph. And the opinion will be a clean or a unmodified opinion, as it has been in the past. Okay, the rest of the report describes some of the other information that's included in the package, and that's all pretty consistent with prior years. Jumping over to page 4 is management's discussion and analysis. This is a narrative of the highlights that happened during the year. So this is something I recommend that the board read through, and just gives a kind of a general overview of the year 2015 in comparison to 2014. So for the non-financial people, it's more helpful to see it in this information. The financial statements start on page 11. Again, the authority's year end is December 31st, so this is as of December 31st, 2015, and 2014 information is also presented, so you can see how the 2015 compares to 2014. So as of December 31st, 2015, there was cash and cash equivalents of just under $3.2 million, which was down about $200,000 from 2014. Then there's restricted cash of almost $1.6 million, which is almost $1 million over what 2014 was. And we do have a disclosure in note 4, which is on page 21, that describes what that restricted cash is. The reason for the increase this year, as you guys will probably remember, is the cash set aside for the future RAD project. It was around 1.2 million, does that sound right?
Nope, it was 750,000.
750,000 was the money set aside for that future RAD project. Okay, so total current assets of just over $5 million. So that's under $880,000 increase from 2014. Other assets pretty consistent with 2014. And then capital assets, your largest assets of just under $11 million. So total assets of $20.4 million, which is up about $680,000 from 2014. Okay, the liabilities and equity sections on the next page. Current liabilities pretty consistent with 2014, just under $370,000. So I always like to point out the current asset versus current liability ratio. So you have current assets of $5 million, and you only have current liabilities of $370,000. So the authority is in a very good financial position to meet all of its current obligations. Long-term liabilities in the middle of the page of just under $570,000. So total liabilities of under $1 million. So again, a very good financial position for the authority. And net position, which is also referred to as equity, of just under $20 million. So equity increased by $570,000 in 2015. So a very good financial position for the authority. Jumping over to the income statement, or the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Total operating revenues of $11.4 million for 2015, which is up to $830,000 from 2014. Most of that increase resulting from increase in HUD operating grants of about $750,000. Operating expenses went up about $250,000, so just under $11.8 million. So for the year, there was an operating loss of about $300,000, which is about a $580,000 improvement from 2014. Then you can see some non-operating revenues and expenses of $243,000. And then HUD capital grant income of $630,000, which is down about $300,000 from 2014. So the total change in net position or net income, $569,600 for 2015. So a $257,000 increase over 2014. One thing I always like to point out too is that the financial information in the front is on a combined level. There is detail in the back of the audit report that you can see the financial statements by program as well. So if you want to see specifically how voucher is doing or the capital fund program, that information is in the back, starting on page 28. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, we'll skip over the cash flow statement. And the cash flow statement is on page 14 and 15. This just basically shows you where your cash was used and where your cash came from during the year. Pretty hard for most financial people to understand the cash flow statement, so the income statement and the balance sheet are more easy to understand. Starting on page 16 are the footnotes, and for the most part, they're all pretty consistent with what they were in the past. As I mentioned, note 4 on page 21 describes what the restricted cash is to be used for. Note 5 on page 22 is the notes receivable that the authority has from the various tax credit projects that Beyond Shelter is the general partner in. And that describes the terms of those notes, when the payments are going to be made, what the interest rate is, and etc. Note 8 is the long-term debt footnote. Page 25 just shows the activity. And then on page 26 shows the 4 loans that the authority has. So very, very few loans that the authority has. Okay, as I mentioned, jumping over to page 28 is the financial statement by program. And I won't go into any detail here unless there's some questions that you have. Jumping over to page 32 is kind of the start of the compliance piece of the audit. Page 32 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This shows what the different federal programs that the authority has and the amount of federal expenditures that you had during 2015. So just under $8.9 million in total expenditures of federal awards, of which the voucher program is by far the largest program. Okay, jumping over to page 34. This is a report that's required under government audit standards. This report requires that if we identify any deficiencies in internal control or any material compliance findings that are material to financial statements, we're required to report them in this letter. We did identify a couple deficiencies this year, and we'll talk about them in a second. Page 36 is the report on compliance. So this would be the report that we issue as far as how the authority is in compliance with all the HUD rules and regulations. Again, similar format. Again, it talks about what management's responsible for. They are responsible for maintaining compliance. It's our responsibility to express an opinion on compliance. Again, these reports are in a draft stage, so there could be some changes. But currently, on the top of page 37, we have a qualified opinion on public housing relating to finding 2015-002, which in talking with Jill, that might be going away. So we'll get into more details on what that finding is, but we tested the public housing program and also the voucher program this year, and we had an unmodified or a clean opinion on the voucher program. In the other matters section, there was a couple immaterial compliance findings, again, which may be going away. 2015-003 finding and 2015-004 finding. Okay, page 39 is kind of a summary of our auditor's results. Again, on the financial statements, we issued a clean or an unmodified opinion. We identified some material weaknesses and some significant deficiencies, which we'll talk about. We had identified no non-compliance that we felt was material to the financial statements. Under the federal award section, currently we have identified some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies.